Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Golden Beard Wisdom Show. I don't know the name of this series, but maybe you can help me in the comments, give me some ideas. And in today's video we will discuss how to fight recessions and avoid massive depressions even. And we will explain how the central banks and the governments can avoid these situations in the 2020s. And I say 2020s because we live now in special conditions and things are not as they work in the past. And if you're not really economic savvy, if you want to call it that way, I will explain how things work so far. So maybe I'll just start with a simple analogy. So imagine this me is spinning, this is the economy. As long as the money is circulating, this machine called economy is working really well. But once people by some reason start, not by some reason, if you watch the previous video, you'll know that there are cycles in the short term and long term. But imagine that people are feeling fearful against, I don't know, a worldwide infection disease. And people start spending less, so there's less money circulating in the economy. What happens when the machine is slowing down is it doesn't look so stable now, right? Imagine when everything is working, it seems like it's always flat, stable, growing. But once the money supply and circulation starts decreasing, the economy starts to slow down. Eventually it could collapse. So what did the central banks do up to this date? Basically, they have a tool called interest rates, which they have. If interest rates are high, that means the cost of money is high. So people are incentivized to save because you have your bank account, your money in the bank, and is gaining interest. Imagine, I don't know, like 10%, gaining 10% a year, which is really good, without doing anything. And like if you want to borrow money, you will also have to pay the same amount of interest. So imagine if the economy is slowing down. What central banks can do is they just pull this magic tool called interest rates and they lower them to, I don't know, let's say 5%. What that will mean is that people now are not so incentivized to save money because they are not receiving 10% now, they are only receiving 5%. And since the loans now are cheaper to borrow, so you can borrow money and you only have to pay 5% of interest, people will be more incentivized to consume, to invest, and so on. So you can look at interest rates as the cost of money. The lower they are, it means that it's cheap money out there. The higher they are, it means that money is expensive. So central banks, normally this was their main tool up to today to try to fight these recessions, or when the economy is appearing to slow down. But as you know, might know, like if you watch any news whatsoever, now with the ZIRP and NIRP, which is zero interest policy rates, the zero interest rates policy and negative interest rates policy. That means that the central banks don't have that tool anymore because we are already at 0%, or even in some countries at -%. So basically imagine asking for $1 million loan and you don't have to pay the interest. That's the best you can ask. Okay, you can have the negative ones. But having that said, that's how things work up to date. But what about now? So the magical tool that the central banks have doesn't work anymore, the interest rates. And that's because in the last couple of years, those interest rates have been kept artificially low. And you might be wondering, why didn't they raise the interest rates after the 2008 recession, the global financial crisis? Well, if you watch the previous video, you now can connect the dots and see that the debt that the countries have is reaching its peak, its all-time highs. And if you raise interest rates, you're also raising the interest rates that you will pay in the debt. So the debts will become more expensive, because remember, the interest rates are the cost of the money. And people tend to have a recency bias. So you only see things that happen, I don't know, in the last few years in your lifetime, and don't tend to watch in the all macro trends and historical periods. So these long-term debt cycles are more easily ignored, because you haven't experienced. This is something that you only experience once in a lifetime, because it ranges from 75 to 100 years. So what can the central banks do? The central banks have 4 options, and bear in mind that the decision makers will always choose the path of least resistance, implying that they will opt for the least painful measures. And in number 1 we have austerity. And if you're Portuguese, you're very familiar with this word. It basically means spending less. The country needs to cut on their public spending in order to pay up the debt that has been built over the previous years. Number 2, restructuring and debt defaults. This is a really harsh measure, and it has like a really bad consequence. Basically, you're not paying the loan. This has not only consequences for your country, but also the countries that lended the money in the first place, and can have a severe impact on your economy in the long term. Not just economic, politically, socially, etc., etc. Then the third one, transfers of money from those who have more than they need to those that then they have less than they need. And that example of that is taxes. And those are the 3 ones that are the most painful ones. And a little side note, if you're Portuguese, you're wondering, well, if those are the 3rd ones and they still have the 4th option, why on hell did we have to suffer austerity for a couple of years? Well, that's simple, because here in Portugal we have the euro, so we don't control our own currency. And if we had escudos, maybe Portugal could have gone for the 4th option, which is inflation, by printing money and devaluing it. So basically you're making your previous debt cheaper because your currency now has less value, so has less purchasing power. But this is like a stealth tax on the population, and the reason why decision makers, and like right now central banks, are opting for printing these massive amounts of money, I should call it currency, it's not really money, but the thing is, they opt for this because this is also a harsh measure, but the average person will not feel the impacts of inflation like right away. This is something that takes long years, and most people are just like, I don't care, this doesn't affect me. It affects them, but they just don't see it as a straight line. They think it is something like really complex, and they just go with it. That's why. I think I'll end the episode here, and like I said in the previous episode, I want to keep these videos short and simple, so that anyone can follow it through. If you have any questions, just leave them down below, and I will name the next episode how to hedge, or how can you hedge against inflation, because that's the last thing we spoke in this video. And thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment down below, share this video, it really helps a lot, and see you next time.